Being part of a highly collaborative team can be so incredibly rewarding. But as a leader, are there things that you can do to create this natural collaboration on your team? The good news is, yes, there are. In this week's episode of The Happy Leader, I'm going to share with you very specific, actionable steps that you can take to increase the collaboration and therefore the results and positive impact on your team. Welcome to The Happy Leader. I'm Amy Sanchez, executive coach to some of the most innovative leaders and teams in Silicon Valley. I'll share stories and tips to help you navigate the most common leadership challenges so you can amplify what matters most: happiness. Anyone who has worked on a team who gets along, gets stuff done, and celebrates milestones together knows how great it feels to be a part of a high-performing team. However, these successful high-performing teams tend to be the exception rather than the rule, and they also tend to be something that we arbitrarily stumble into. But is it possible to take what we know about high-performing teams and turn a suboptimal team into a high-performing, collaborative one? I can tell you from experience that the answer is an overwhelming yes. I've worked with many teams that started suboptimal, and I took them into really high-performing teams by using some simple yet powerful techniques. I'm going to share those with you today. In this episode, we'll explore why collaboration is so crucial, and more importantly, give you some actionable ways to foster better collaboration within your team. Whether you're managing a small group or leading a large organization, today's insights are designed to help you improve your team's collaboration. To start, let's look at why collaboration is important. There was an interesting study done at Stanford. It's called The Cues of Working Together Fuel Intrinsic Motivation. And this study found that even the mere perception of working collectively on a task can supercharge our performance. Participants who were in the research who were primed to act collaboratively stuck at their tasks 64% longer than their solitary partners, while also reporting higher engagement levels, lower fatigue levels, and a higher success rate. What's more, this impact persisted for several weeks. So what does this teach us about collaboration? Well, it's probably no surprise that when we are a part of a collaborative team and we know that others are relying on us to get stuff done, it drives us to give more. We as humans, we thrive when we're in communities, particularly supportive communities. So as we look at creating collaboration in the corporate world, it's incredibly powerful to put people together to drive towards a common task. Now, how do we do that in a way that's really going to optimize everybody's performance? Well, we know that collaboration can lead to better solutions, higher levels of satisfaction, and improved creativity. But how exactly are we supposed to do that? Well, to get to the answer of what we should do, let's start by looking at what prevents effective collaboration from happening. To illustrate this point, I'm going to cite a rather unconventional study, but one that really brings this to life. There was an evolutionary biologist named William W. Muir, and he experimented in livestock breeding. He found that competition among domesticated plants or animals can have a dramatic negative impact on yield of a stand or a farm. In short, when you put animals, people, or plants together that are in direct competition with one another, it's going to decrease collaboration. That's probably no surprise, right? Further on, Muir went on to breed more passive rather than competitive hens, and eventually that allowed the chickens to become healthier and produce more eggs than they previously did. He eliminated the competition variable, and it worked in his favor. Now, this was in large part, his experiment worked when he bred the less competitive chickens, because the more passive chickens were no longer aggressively competing with each other for food and other resources. Do you get where I'm going with this? As we extend this thinking to the corporate world, the same principles apply. In the corporate world, we have highly educated and often competitive people on a team together. And here's the key. We also have scarce resources. When we have competitive people and scarce resources, collaboration is very difficult to achieve. Human nature always presents itself. And in this case, individuals on teams start to hold their cards close so they could win versus others on the team. When you have scarcity or a lack of necessary resources, it causes a mental shift where an individual only has the mental energy to spend on the immediate problem and nothing else, including how do I collaborate in an efficient way with my partners. There is not time or space to think about that because humans are so focused on making sure that their needs are met. This is something that we want to be really super aware of and address as we think about being leaders of highly collaborative and successful teams. Essentially, what we want to do is get our people away from worry and anxiety, where they're more likely to be stuck in fight or flight mode, and instead move them into a place of curiosity and creativity. As I talk about scarce resources in the corporate space, this can include things like funding, budget, headcount, promotions, raises. It can also include less obvious things like attention and recognition from the leader. In short, the good news is when we understand what prevents collaboration, we can focus on creating the conditions to improve collaboration and foster better team cohesion. Let me give you some very actionable tips that you can immediately implement to promote collaboration and therefore better outcomes and a more positive experience on your team. The first tip that I have for you is don't harp on scarcity. Scarcity of resources is a fact in a profitable company that's going to be present. The key is how you position it and foster the perception of the scarcity among your team. If you're the leader of the team and you recognize that the scarcity in your company causes you anxiety, you are likely unintentionally passing this fear onto your team through your communication, through your body language, through the decisions that you're making. It's contagious. Oftentimes, by the way, this happens very subconsciously or unconsciously, which is why it's important to listen to episodes like this to help you become aware of these practices that happen in the background that may be unintentionally negatively impacting your team. The antidote to this focus on scarcity is to first start with how you show up and look closely how scarcity is driving your approach. Try to refrain from harping on the scarce resource as a barrier and instead consider focusing on what you do have as you solve problems. Hey, we might not have $100 million budget, but we are smart and we are resourceful and we can figure this out. Let's focus on what we do have and what's worked in the past as we solve this problem. Look at it from a more optimistic standpoint. Now, if you have trouble getting away from the scarcity mindset, you may want to take time to explore what interpretations are impacting your perceptions. Working with an executive coach like me can really help you examine how the idea of scarcity impacts you to help focus on what's possible instead of dwelling on limitations. Bottom line, if you're optimistic and you're open to possibilities, it will help your team do the same. Actionable tip number 2, foster a culture where it's safe to speak openly. Building trust and allowing for open communication on your team is crucial. You'll want to foster a culture where it's safe to speak openly. The way you can do this is by encouraging sharing of wins and admitting mistakes. Start by modeling this with your team. Be vulnerable, and your team is going to feel safe to do the same thing. Mistakes is how we learn. Before the light bulb was invented, there were 99 failed prototypes. So don't be afraid to make mistakes and don't be afraid to communicate to your team that it's okay to do so. Encourage open sharing in both a group setting as well as through your one-on-ones. If you're trying this and everybody on your team stays silent, there is something unsaid that is preventing your team from speaking up. Try and diagnose what that is by asking questions and address what may be getting in their way without attacking people. Create opportunities for your team to connect in ways other than just exchanging business information. Really building true, genuine connection among humans is the path towards collaboration. Also, celebrate diversity and inclusion. The more diverse your team, the more diverse the ideas that your team generate will be. And that's a very good thing when problem solving. Here's tip number 3. Get out of the middle. Part of encouraging collaboration is reinforcing the importance that your team works together and cross-functionally to arrive at the right solution. You don't want people thinking in silos. Avoid the urge to take over challenges when your direct reports get stuck. Instead, ask them questions that will help them problem solve. Who might you be able to connect with to help find the solution? Who might have information that can help you with this? When you see good collaboration in action and the actions that you're taking are encouraging collaboration, highlight it to the team and celebrate it. When you provide positive reinforcement behind the behaviors you want to see more of, your team will start to look for more. These are 3 very actionable, semi-easy tips to implement. Now, of course, the real question is when you go to implement these, how well does it work both for you and the team? If you find yourself getting stuck and these tips are just not working as promised and you want an easier way to jumpstart the process of greater collaboration on your team, reach out to me and we can talk about conducting a workshop that will really help open your team up and create the conditions that will allow them to collaborate. I've done many of these for teams who are looking to get better footing. What I like to use is a combination of DISC as well as the 5 Dimensions of a High-Performing Team by Patrick Lencioni. I find the combination of those is incredibly successful at opening up a team and giving them very actionable ways to collaborate together. Give some of these tips a try and see what lands for you and your team. But remember, being a good leader starts with first tending to your basic needs. So block off time to take care of you. Stay happy out there. Thanks for listening to The Happy Leader. If you would like more information about me, Amy Sanchez, and our executive coaching and team leadership services at Swim Against the Current, visit swim-against.com. And if you liked this podcast, help others who could use the support find it by giving us a rating. Until next time, life is short. Stay happy.